Hello, welcome back to AP Comparative Government. Welcome back to Studio Room 2C, where there's always room to see how countries compare, and there's room to see, hopefully, how you improve in your FRQ writing compared to Monday's tough FRQs. We are going to get right into those samples for both the argument essay and the quantitative analysis. Remember, if this is your first time tuning in, there are only two FRQs, the argument essay and the quantitative analysis for comparative government. I am Andrew Canine. I teach at Adlai Stevenson in the north suburbs of Chicago. I'm really recommending, I'm not going to spend as much time with this as I did on Monday's practice. Make sure you get your AP ID, your advanced placement ID. If you don't know where to get that, maybe some of the emails you've gotten recently, but for sure, go to myap.collegeboard.org, go to your profile, registration, you're going to find your ID there. That's going to be a relief because that's a real key step that you need on all the tops of your FRQs plus your initials. You're going to get a lot of tips on what to do on exam day from this video. I've really been emphasizing going that to the exam walkthrough video. Mrs. Bailey, who was on yesterday, was really emphasizing go to the exam demo site to really get a comprehensive look that's going to really reduce your anxiety if you're stressed about the logistics side of what you're going to start on Monday, May 11th. Obviously, the AP comparative exam is not May 11th. We are May 22nd. I do want to, before we get to those questions, a shout out to Ms. Sarah Fisher, also in the AP Comparative Government Reading Hall of Fame out in Washington State. Dia was on our hashtag APCompGov 2020. Thank you, Dia, for reaching out to the hashtag. We had more Nigerian political activists, the great Zazikia, at the hashtag, a global trend, hashtag APCompGov 2020. You wouldn't expect anything else from AP Comparative Government. And Chris G. and Alex Dewey Benrocks continue to provide really interesting examples and questions and check mix, potential check mix. I'm going to get into that more tomorrow, mixing those concepts. It's a great way to prepare. But today is prep day. I really suggest that you have available, not just a prep, but on the exam day, use the course description. It's really comprehensive. It's organized thematically, which your teacher might not have done if they cover this country by country, but you can still go into course description and look up a lot of country-specific examples, which are super helpful. Here's the exact link to go to that course description. You can also look at vocabulary. The course description highlights in the 3 units that are fair game, units 1, 2, and 3, I say highlight, that's literal. Metaphorically, they mention all the concepts that are fair game. If you want to see highlighted concepts, go to my resources at citizenu.org, where Mr. Larson has put together the comparative corner. And I have my texts that I use as daily supplements that I've used from all of my lesson notes that for these AP Live PowerPoint slides. I have glossaries for all 5 units in the thematic approach that literally does highlight and bolds key concept and vocabulary that I've gone over in these different unit topics on AP Live. I'll go to comparative corner. So I'm going to show you 2 questions today that you're going to write to. You're going to have 30 minutes for the argument essay. Then you'll have 20 minutes for the quantitative analysis. That replicates the time you'll have on May 22nd. I have to be really careful to let you know that that last 5 minutes, I'm going to talk through the instructions on how to upload, because really it's the last 5 minutes, 25 minutes to write the argument essay, giving you a 5-minute window to upload or copy and paste your answers or take a picture of your handwriting on your phone. You have 5 minutes to upload for both the argument essay and the quantitative analysis. So I'll walk through some of those tips during that 5-minute time. So I'm going to go through these quickly, but after, at the last 5 minutes of each of the questions, I'll talk through these a little bit more. Make sure if you're really panicked, you can also go back to the practice 1 from 2 days ago, where I spent a little bit more time talking through these. But essentially, there's 3 ways for College Board to get your written work. One is to attach a document. Two is to copy and paste in the field that you'll see. And the third option is to, if you're handwriting especially, is to take a photo. In all three of those options, you want your AP ID and your initials at the top. And Mrs. Bailey gave a terrific recommendation. If you're handwriting, you want multiple pieces of paper, numbered in order, with your AP ID and your initials. And if you are typing on a Google Doc or word processing document, pre-populate, create a header with your AP ID and your initials. I probably said Apple ID. I've said that all week. AP ID is what we care about. And then we'll talk about submitting your responses. So, sorry. So we're going to get into the argument essay. This is unlike any ones you've before because I didn't write this. Every question you have seen throughout these almost 33 days, 31 days, in all my previous lessons, every question I have written that. Okay, so I get in the patterns. I did not write your exam on May 22nd. So really qualified people wrote it. They're really good question writers, but it wasn't me. So I get in the patterns with how I phrase things that you might see a little bit differently when you see the College Board exam on May 22nd. And you're probably going to see here. And if you've been watching enough of these lessons, you're going to recognize some of those differences. It's fine. Take a deep breath. Everything that I have tried to help you to do, particularly since topic 3.1, when we got the revised question descriptions for the argument essay and the quantitative analysis, all the tasks that I've encouraged and tried to teach you how to do and try to improve on, writing a claim, supporting the claim, using country evidence, making sure you use all your concepts in your claim and your evidence, supporting your evidence, supporting your claim with reasoning, and then the quantitative analysis, using really specific data, making sure you demonstrate that you understand concepts, to elaborate on concepts in the quantitative analysis, to try to use extra time. You're going to have extra time. Use extra time to go back and extend your answers. So I'm going to stop talking a little bit here. We need to get into the questions, but I just graded a bunch of my students. I have some really terrific students who it's May, it's early May, and they're not writing the most when they're writing for their teacher, Mr. Kaneen, right? And I know a couple are watching these shows, the lessons, but most aren't, right? Nationally recognized, locally ignored, and that's fine. But really, if you've been watching these lessons, elaborate. Think less, ink more, but make sure you do think about those key skills and tips that I've been passing on. So first one's argument essay. You have 30 minutes. That includes 5 minutes to upload. Here we go into that question right now. And I'm going to read through this, and I'm going to get rid of my screen. Let's see. Okay, so develop an argument as to whether democratic or authoritarian regimes are better at maintaining sovereignty in a country. Choose one or more of the following 4 countries. So you have to use at least one of the 4: Iran, Mexico, Nigeria, and Russia. It's most common to use 2. And you have to use the following course concept in your response. And the concept is legitimacy. All right. So the rest of the directions are what we've seen: to respond with a prompt with a defensible claim or thesis that establishes a line of reasoning. You have to have reasoning, some kind of because in your thesis. Support your claim with 2 pieces of country-specific and relevant evidence from one or more of the course countries. The evidence should be relevant to the provided course concept. So you got to bring legitimacy in through your thesis. In each of your evidence paragraphs, use reasoning to explain why 2 pieces of specific and relevant evidence support your claim or thesis. You're gonna be breathing a sigh of relief if you thought Mondays was difficult, because you're probably gonna think this is easier. I gotta caution you. I was writing an answer to this earlier this morning, and I got trapped into some of this. So I do want to tell you, make sure you pick one or the other. Don't argue both sides on this. Make sure you use that phrase, maintaining sovereignty. Just don't talk about sovereignty. Talk about maintaining sovereignty. Think about that as one concept, maintaining sovereignty. All right, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you write. Once you think you've got it all, if you have extra time, go back and add. Okay, you're going to have 5 minutes to keep writing, and then 5 minutes that are going to give you time to practice uploading. You're not uploading anything today, but I would recommend you maybe send a copy to your teacher and try to get feedback. If you've run out of things to write, here's my tips. Go back. Make sure that you have all of the terms in your claim. Make sure you've taken one stance on this claim. Is it a democratic or an authoritarian regime that's better at maintaining sovereignty? And make sure you've integrated that word legitimacy in your claim at the top in each of your country evidence paragraphs. Make sure legitimacy is in there clear. Make sure that you've demonstrated that you know what legitimacy means. I would do the same thing to make sure that you've demonstrated that you know what maintaining sovereignty means. Just don't drop those words in there. Try to elaborate and prove that you know what those concepts mean. And if you've only written one sentence for your claim or one sentence for your evidence one and one sentence for your evidence two, I would go back and I would rephrase my claim especially. That's a mega point. If you can get that claim, you're going to open up a lot more potential points on your way to 7 points. If your claim isn't going to get the claim, you cannot get a maximum score in this. In fact, you can only, you can't get a maximum score. So make sure, put a second sentence in your claim in your thesis. And then I would go back and I would make sure that each of my evidence one and evidence two, I would make sure that that claim is really clearly linked to my country-specific evidence with some kind of indication of causation. Because, due to, therefore, thus, that is why. So I'm going to stop talking. About 3 more minutes of writing, and then I'll talk through the uploading instructions. Okay, so again, at this point in your testing experience for AP Comparative Government, you should be wrapping up your writing. You should start the uploading process or the submitting process. And you have three different options with this. One is to attach a document and then submit. And you want to make sure on that document that you have your AP ID and initials at the top of the response for argument essay. And you're going to make sure you submit either a Google Doc as a PDF, or you could submit a Microsoft Word doc as a doc. You can submit .txt, PDF, and you can submit it that way. So uploading a document. Option 2 is to copy and paste. You can choose the option and it'll populate a screen that you can fill in and copy and paste from your word processing document. Make sure you have everything on there. Make sure every part of your answer is on there, including your AP ID with your initials, right? And so even though if you copy and paste, make sure you go back and make sure that you didn't miss any paragraphs and double check that. And then the third option, particularly if you're handwriting, you're going to want to take a picture of that handwritten response. Make sure you follow these directions really carefully, because in this case, you do need, again, your AP ID and your initials at the top. If you're using multiple pages, you want to number those multiple pages. You need to take a picture vertically of your response and submit it that way. So those are the three different options. And this slide is indicating kind of walking you through that process. I should have put this slide at the beginning, but you have to hit submit. Make sure you hit submit and follow all those steps. Again, go back and watch that exam day video. It's super helpful. It walks you graphically through those three different options, and it's only 4 minutes long, and you'll get a really quick idea. All right. So I know we have about 2 minutes left. Oh, there it is. Okay. And as we go into the quantitative analysis question, which is next, I'm going to caution you that this is a line graph and includes data from all 6 countries. And graphically, it's pretty big, which means it might be hard to read on your screen, particularly given the resolution of your screen that you're watching this lesson on. So if you need to go, there is a link to this exact question at the tiny URL on the right-hand column when I show this to you. I'll try to talk you through the data, but if you're having a hard time reading the data, go to the tiny URL and you can bring up the PDF and you can expand it on your screen. I will tell you, as we get into the data in this next one, the quantitative analysis, particularly when you see the data and it first pops up on your screen, again, calm, deep breath. You want to be data literate. You want to look at the title. Naturally, your eyes are going to go to the center of the data. That's what you do when you look at a new piece of art. Your eyes go right to the center, but you want to get those eyes to go to the periphery. You want to read the title. You want to read the X and Y axis. You want to see what countries are listed. In this case, I'm telling you, it's all 6 countries. If there are any footnotes, yesterday's data, we had some footnotes. If you definitely want to read footnotes. If there are certain years, you want to read years, then maybe look at inside the data and get a quick feel, but then go to the question and say, all right, what do I need to look for in the data? And read the question and then go back and reacquaint yourself with the data set, but use some data literacy skills as you first get into this data. All right, so the timing of this, again, we have about 30 seconds left for you to upload and submit. Of course, you're not uploading and submitting anything right now, but if you want to send it to your teacher, send them a copy. Make sure they know what question you're answering to. If they don't know what question you're answering to, they'll have no clue how to score it. But feel free to send it to your teacher for feedback. All right, we got 5 seconds. We're going to start the quantitative analysis. 3, 2, 1, right now. All right, so, and I'll read through this. If you need a bigger screen, go to the tiny URL at the right, right? So you can go in here. Oh, here we go. Title, proportion of seats held by women in national legislatures. I would use that. Use that title. Mrs. Bailey gave you that tip yesterday. Use that title. We have percent of total number of seats over here. We have at the bottom the years. I forgot my X and Y axis. That's why I said over here. I am not good at remembering that. But down here, we have the years 2004 to 2018. We have the source, United Nations Statistics Division, Sustainable Development Goals, Indicators, Global Database, all right? And we have our countries, United Kingdom, Nigeria, Russia, Mexico, Iran. Again, this gets kind of small. And so you got to figure out that that top line is Mexico, and you got to figure out that this next line is United Kingdom, and the square is Nigeria, and the triangle is Russia, and the asterisk down here is Iran. All right, so you figure that out. Beyond that, let's go into the question. A, describe a trend of the data for Iran between 2004 and 2018. Explain a reason for this trend. If you've been listening to these, you know that trend or pattern or difference indicate you gotta talk about at least 2 pieces of data in this and be specific. B, use the data in the graph and your knowledge of AP comparative government and politics, draw a conclusion about the regime type in Iran. So here we have the concept of regime type in Iran. And then C, explain why the proportion of seats held by women in the national legislature differs in Iran and Mexico. So here we have the differs. And you're going to see this is phrased a little bit differently from the way I've phrased them. Make sure you use specific data in all 3 of these. And that is where my students are pretty weak. And I have to comment a lot on their writing. Don't just generally describe data, use specific numbers. You have the numbers here. The answers are in here. Use labels, use titles, use country names. Be specific with your data. All right, I'm going to stop talking and let you answer these 3. Again, I would suggest, yeah, you could answer these 3 in 1 or 2 sentences, but you're going to have time. Add a 3rd sentence, add a 4th sentence with your time. All right, good luck. Okay, again, you have 5 minutes left for the writing portion. Then you'll have 5 minutes timing to practice uploading to make sure you have enough time to upload. If you're done writing, and I suspect that a lot of you are done writing on this, go back and add a second, third, or fourth sentence to each of these responses. Make sure that you have specific numbers in your responses. Make sure your trend in data has, over time, and talk about the years, right? Not generally, but use specific years. Use multiple sources of data. Make sure you've explained why. When it says explain a reason, that means how or why. Make sure there's a because in your A to explain that trend. For B, draw a conclusion. Make sure there's a because. This is why. And make sure you elaborate on regime type to prove that you understand different regime types. You can use your knowledge from the argument essay. You just wrote an argument essay about regime type. You can use that knowledge here. And then C, it says explain why, a proportion of seats. Make sure, again, there's a because in your answer. You don't need to go back and rephrase what you've already written, but you don't have to go back and fix what you've already written, but you can certainly add on to it. You can rephrase what you've already written, make sure there's a because or a statement of causation, explain why the proportion of seats held by women in the national legislature differs in Iran and Mexico. And I'm telling you, you've got to have data, cite data for Iran and cite data for Mexico in there. That's the implication in C, that you have to use data about the proportion of seats for Iran and Mexico in order to earn the data point here. You have 2 minutes, and then I'll walk you through the uploading process, and that will take care of our practice 2 day. Okay, so you're getting familiar with the timing of this. Again, you should be able to be wrapping up your answers to these 3 tasks. And this would be time that you could practice the timing of submitting your responses again. 3 different options. You can attach a document as a PDF or a doc. You can copy and paste your response. Make sure on all these options, make sure your AP ID and your initials are at the top of your response. In particular, if you are handwriting, you're taking a picture on your phone, make sure that phone is vertical. Make sure your AP ID, your initials, and any page numbers on multiple pages are included in that picture. All right. And then these directions link you to the 3 different options of attaching a text file, attaching a photo, or pasting your text in the response. All right. So practice those. Use that demo resources. The exam demo site, use those resources. You can practice this. A lot of different resources here. The walkthrough, again, particularly on uploading and how the exam day is going to be scheduled, the logistics, the 5 steps before exam day. Definitely want to get that AP ID situated to get all of this started. All right. And then, of course, prepping for your AP 2020 exams video, which you're already doing by watching AP Live with AP Comparative Government. So at this point, you would have 3 minutes left to make sure you hit that submit, to make sure that your response is official. Just to give you an idea of timing. If you, and again, feel free to email your teachers those responses and get their feedback. I have put yesterday's responses that I wrote for the sample questions that I wrote at citizenu.org. Go to Comparative Corner that Mr. Larson's created, where you can find a couple different resources there, including practice FRQs. And if you go to the bottom, you can see my sample answers. Tomorrow's lesson, I'll be going through a sample answer of what I've written. Just breaking news, just got word. Have to admit, I was checking my email while you guys were writing. The chief reader for AP Comparative Government will be with us tomorrow to give insights on writing and writing tips. And he'll get to score my writing for you to see. And as we get ready, I would go back as you're prepping, go back and look at those 2 exam questions and the 3 different responses of the prompts in the quantitative analysis. And I would write down what concepts did you see being assessed? Because a lot of this writing is your ability to mix different concepts, to be able to articulate and prove you know the different concepts. And certainly in both types of questions, you have to bring in some of your country knowledge to talk about those concepts. So again, if you are worried about your timing and maybe you're still writing that quantitative analysis, you have about 1 minute and 15 seconds left before you would have to hit submit. So I am going to wrap up this lesson in exactly 1 minute, because that would be the time that you would have to submit. I would invite you before we get into Thursday as we review question set number 2, and then Friday is going to be a really short lesson. I'm going to try to bring in another guest star in the AP Live on Friday as well, as we wrap things up and celebrate your preparation. But you have 2 days left for your teacher shoutouts at #APCompGov2020. So if you have a teacher or a classmate that you miss, feel free to get on Twitter, shout them out at #APCompGov2020. And we have 10 seconds left. That would be your time to actually submit that question of the quantitative analysis. Of course, you're not going to submit it, but send it to your teacher for their feedback. And thank you for tuning in to Studio Room 2C, where there's always room to see how countries compare. Thank you, and have a wonderful afternoon, and be well.